Special guest in conversation. I was so looking forward to this interview. I got a bit excited, and people would say, "Who have you got coming in?" I said, "Well, we're going to be talking about Inferno," and they said, "Who have you got?" I said, "We've got Ron Howard," and they went, "You haven't?" And I go, "I have." And so I'm delighted to say that he's here now.
Oh, thank you.
I so wanted to meet you for years, but there again, I'm the same age as you, but I've grown up with you. You didn't grow up with me. I grew up with you. Because you crammed so much into your life. I mean, you started at what, 5?
Yeah, well, 4 actually.
4.
It's if I stop and think about it, which I don't do very often. It's a pretty unusual, been a pretty unusual existence. But it's been my life, and I've enjoyed every minute of it, or almost every minute of it. I don't think any of us can say,
No, you're right.
There are a few dips in the road.
But there again, sometimes because of what we do, and we were saying a moment ago that we actually love doing what we do, and we get paid for doing it, and it brings enjoyment to people at the same time. You with your, a catalogue of successes. I mean, you couldn't have been more blessed if the Almighty Himself had come down and given you these films.
I don't feel it could go much better, but I also don't look back that often. I really enjoy what I'm doing. Yeah. I like to work on different kinds of stories. This is a time in the world of entertainment where you can find so many different ways to tell stories and reach specific audiences, and it's a pleasure. It's a time for me as a creative person. My kids are all grown. Yeah. I've got a lot of experience behind me and a lot of energy to go forward, and I'm really trying to enjoy that, and I am.
How many films have you made with Tom Hanks now? What is it?
This is the 5th film that I've directed. Inferno is the 5th film that I've directed with him. And he's also, we produced From the Earth to the Moon, a miniseries for HBO about the Apollo missions together. And he also acted in a couple of other films for Imagine Entertainment with my partner, Brian Grazer.
It's amazing, really, because you must know each other so well now, especially this is the 3rd film. I nearly said it was a trilogy, but they're all standalone stories.
They're all standalone stories.
Which I saw the other week, which I tried to... Somebody said to me, "What's it like?" And I said, well, you're going to find yourself scratching your head because things happen that have to be explained to you as the film goes through.
Yes.
And that's the bit I have to try and remember. But the one thing I loved about this, it's very pacey, very, very pacey from the beginning. Secondly, you don't seem to use CGI.
Yeah, well, we don't use very much movie magic. On this movie, we were able to go to the places much more frequently than in the past. And that was a pleasure. It's also a headache for me as a director because it becomes all logistics, but it begins in such a great way. You love Dan Brown's book. It suggests this kind of, cinematic adventure that you're going to get to go on and you're going to share with audiences. So you go with your little group of collaborators and you begin the problem solving, and you go to Florence and you go to Istanbul and you go to Venice and you're getting this tremendous tour like nobody else ever gets, because they're showing you every nook and cranny, and you're comparing it to all these fascinating details that Dan has written about in the book, and it's just a dream. You have great lunches, stay in nice hotels. It's all a lot of laughs, and then suddenly now we're going to do it. So now it's actors and it's crew, and the scene that you normally would have a full day to shoot, you have maybe 2 hours because that's all the access they can give you in the Piazza Navona or wherever it is that you're trying to shoot.
Because you have to book it out, don't you?
Yeah, absolutely. Because Dan chooses these places because, of course, these are the places that everyone in the world wants to go visit, and they do. And the people in the local government are as cooperative as they can be, but. They have to look after the local merchants. They have to look after the tourists who've designed their vacations around this. And as Tom Hanks likes to say, we're well aware that we're ruining a lot of people's vacations by stealing those hours. But
people love it because when a movie rolls into town, I know because we film in London a lot, there's always trucks out there doing something, and it's like a city is on the move. For making a huge film like yours, I wouldn't like to imagine how many people are involved.
Well,
Hundreds.
there are a lot involved, but in order to go into those densely populated places, like let's say we're shooting in Florence or Venice, it was very crowded when we were shooting in Venice. And we have and look, this movie is about overpopulation. So I wanted to use these places and the density of the population visually as much as I could, to keep reinforcing that theme underneath it, that crisis point. But so we couldn't obviously clear the square. And I didn't really want to. But what we did was we kind of hid our cameras, tucked in quietly, got Tom Hanks and and Felicity Jones, and about, maybe 75 or 100 paid extras around them, people who wouldn't look at the camera, wouldn't stop and ask for Tom's autograph and so forth. And we just started sneaking out there and quickly doing these shots. And then they would kind of scurry back into the shadows and wait till we move the cameras around, and then they'd come out and do another one. And at a certain point, people would start yelling, "Hey, Tom, Tom, Tom." And well, those are the people that we have to take that sound out later.
That's right,
But we go in more like an indie film. And I think that sort of indie spirit, energy has given the movie that pace you're talking about, because audiences do tell us, all of our test audiences feel that, this one actually scored quite a bit higher than the previous two. And part of it is that pace and that energy, and people feel like this one is the quickest and most suspenseful probably of
Absolutely.
of the three.
I loved it. I loved the shooting, but that was the question in my mind. Did you have the cameras hidden? Because we're playing with real people out there, and people are fascinated by filming. When they used to do, I think it was Cagney and Lacey, they used to film the car chases and stuff like that, but without telling people, so that they got the reaction that they wanted, which I thought was highly dangerous. But nevertheless, it always seemed to work for them. And in this one, because you're dealing with really crowded places, it poses huge logistical problems for you as a director to make sure you get the right scene without somebody in the background waving. You think, please not.
On Angels and Demons, we were shooting in front of the Pantheon in Rome, and we were told we had a limited amount of time, and unfortunately, I was getting a little bit behind. I didn't quite have all the shots done. Tom knew this, and they said, "I'm sorry, you're going to have to go. We told you got to leave. There's a wedding coming in here, and a wedding at 3:00. And I said, "I've got 3 more shots." And so Tom said, "Let me see if I can help." And as the car pulled up, he himself went over and opened the door and introduced himself to the bride and groom, escorted her in, signed a few autographs, and said, "If you don't mind, Ron still has a couple of shots to do over here." And he bought our way to being able to complete that scene. So, what a great collaborator to have on a creative level. Yeah. But he's one of those people that if you want to be in the creative trenches with anybody, it's somebody like Tom.
Yeah, it obviously works very well for you. You seem to have a great relationship. He also is very good with the camera. He just seems to be very good. His career has changed so many different directions. Yeah. He was when we did Splash, of course, again that was another side of him that we see. Well, there's something about him. He just comes over as nice. He
is nice. He's not nice in that sort of self-conscious way. It's not so much about design. It just reflects his principles, the way he wants to comport himself. And thank you. And he has tremendous. Oh, that was tea. I just
that was
got
tea arriving. Yes. It'll be on the video. You'll see the tea arriving.
And he has evolved because he's a very intelligent audience member.
Yeah.
He loves to read. He loves to watch, and he loves to think about what he reads and watches. And he's a tough critic. And he does not want to fall into any of the traps, the kind of things that he would deride, like people trying to play the wrong age. Yeah. Yes. Or, for example, in this movie, Robert Langdon is in league with Felicity Jones, who plays this doctor who finds him in this ER room, and Langdon doesn't quite know, where he is or how he fits into this mystery, and suddenly she's caught up in it with him, and it turns out that that they're very similar people in a lot of ways. They're both brilliant. They were both kind of strange outsiders as children, but Tom was the first one to sort of say, let's not suggest some romantic link between me, I'm about to turn 60, and Felicity Jones, who's 30, let's not do that. That's the cliche. Yeah. And but it was important that there be, a real connection, a depth there, and he was able to do that, and basically, treat that character almost as though he was looking at a younger version of himself.
Yes.
And that's what I wanted, because it is a story in a way of geniuses in the way they will respond to a crisis like. A fanatical terrorist attempt.
I don't tell you too much about. I don't want to tell them too much about this.
Okay, great,
because
great.
You have to see it.
Oh, good. Okay.
Because it's don't bother reading the book.
Music to my ears.
Music to your ears, exactly.
Thank you.
Do not bother reading the book. You need to see the film and then probably go and read the book.
Speaking of music, though, I really liked Hans Zimmer's score on this one, which was another thing that was different than the previous movie. And without giving anything away, because Hans Zimmer did the music on the first two, and I directed them in a more classical way, a little more of a Hitchcockian sort of a way, because they were steeped in history and theology, and there was a kind of reverence or something that I wanted. This had had an immediacy because of the crisis, because of the nature of the characters who were involved, and the mystery surrounding Langdon. And so I shot it that way. And when Hans saw it, he said, wow, between these sort of Dante-inspired hellish images and the pace and the energy of it all, this is really a different movie. And I want to reflect the themes from the previous movies, but I want to deconstruct them in a more contemporary way. It's a really different kind of a feel, isn't it?
Yes, completely different. Listen, very, very quick break. More from Ron Howard after this. Special guest in conversation. It used to be Ronnie Howard,
Yes,
but that was
it
many, many years ago when he did The Music Man. I think you were credited in The Music Man, Ron Howard, as Ronnie.
And then I was still Ronnie all the way through American Graffiti, because I was Ronnie Howard on this show in America, the Andy Griffith Show.
Yes, it's a cute picture of you on the internet.
Oh, is there?
Cute picture.
But after American Graffiti, in fact, I tried to get them to change my credit for American Graffiti, and they said, no, audiences know you as Ronnie. Let's stick with Ronnie, please. And so the next big job for me was the Happy Days series, and I shifted it over to Ron then.
And then you popped up in Laverne and Shirley.
Well, Laverne and Shirley popped up with us first, because that was a spin-off of an episode that we did. And, as was Mork and Mindy, a spin-off, and unintentional. In both instances, it was just Cindy Williams and Penny Marshall did a guest shot on the show, and it was just... They just were great together, and it was a really fun episode to do, hilarious. And the network said, how about them for a series? And so Gary Marshall created that. And the same thing happened with Robin Williams, who came on and just did a guest shot. And it was such a remarkable performance and character. I'll never forget, him exploding in our rehearsals with this, just with this the creativity and the level of comedy was and invention was kind of mind blowing. And of course they turned that into a television series.
Yes, I mean, luckily I bought all the box sets. I'm afraid I did fall into the trap of buying into these fantastic American shows that sort of took us away to another time when everything was wonderful and happy and great.
Well, I think Happy Days became a big success in a few countries, including England, really before it took off in the U.S. So there was something there that that English audiences were finding, that and Australian and Italian. Those were our first big three markets.
Well, it worked brilliantly. You can buy all the box sets. So 80, you leave that. Did you know that you wanted to direct?
Well, I left. Yeah, by the time Happy Days started, I was already in film school. And very...
You were at Desilu?
Well, no.
Did Desilu come later?
Desilu was before. That's where we did the Andy Griffith show. But I was at USC and a film major, and just beginning that process of trying to train myself to be a director. And Happy Days came along, and it seemed like a good job. I didn't imagine it would last very long. I thought I could bank some money and get back to school. And the show went on and on and on. And during that time, I got a chance to direct. I never stopped making short films on the weekends and writing scripts and things like that. And I got to make my first movie, and then I got to make a couple of television movies during the hiatus. And then I met Brian Grazer, who's my partner at Imagine Entertainment, and he had an idea for a movie which turned out to be Night Shift, which was our first feature film for a studio. And by that time, I decided my contract was up with Happy Days, and I decided not to extend it, but to commit fully to being a director.
How do they teach you to be a director? What are they teaching you to do? I understand the word.
You mean at film school?
Yes, in film school.
Well, you see a lot of movies, and you dissect it, and you begin to understand the power of editing, and you break everything down so that you understand not just stories but scenes and moments, and it's really just to take an analytical look at what we already kind of intuitively know about movies and TV shows. In fact, I often tell people, young students, when they ask what they should do, and I said, besides writing and making your own shorts, which now with digital technology and computers, you can do so much. But aside from that, take your favorite movie, watch it, look at a scene that you particularly like, watch it again, and now watch it one more time with the sound off, because now you're going to see, sound is kind of hypnotic and it kind of draws you in. Now you're going to see, really how fast was the car going in that action scene? What was the coverage? You almost never notice what the camera angles are when you have the sound going and the dialogue and the music and the flow. But when you just turn the sound off and watch, it becomes very apparent. You begin to see it in these building blocks. And that's what the director has to do, is understand those building blocks, get them, capture them, take them to the editing room, and then that's when you really, discover your movie is in the editing room.
So do you, when you're filming a scene, do you see the scene in front of you? You see it out there, you can sort of block it, you can see where it's all supposed to be happening, and that's your vision.
I see an overall feeling, like an atmosphere. And then I begin to see the way I want to understand certain moments within the scene. So I'll begin to understand that I want the two characters together for a certain dialogue exchange, or I want to see, if it's one of the Dan Brown movies, I'll want the camera to drift over to a statue, so that as the dialogue's going on, you're beginning to see, you're feeling the history, and then maybe the focus will drift to the statue because that's becoming a clue. And so I begin to see these sort of components, these building blocks within the scene, and then I bridge all of those together, and they become the shot list for the day, and I shoot it as best we can, take it to the editing room and see if it works. And sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't, and you wind up having to reinvent it some other way.
But you haven't heard the music at that point.
No. Some directors work with the music in advance, or they'll play songs to create a mood, and that's not something that I do. I can imagine that there might be a music moment, but I'm not hearing the music. I'm kind of literal. I'm focused on dialogue. I love actors. Because I was an actor, I care about the performances. Again, it's one of the things I really like about Inferno, is I think that the relationships matter more in this movie, and nuances in the performances matter even more in Inferno than in Da Vinci Code or Angels and Demons. So I'm thinking about those details and building the story, because at the end of the day, it's a communication. And all I want to do is sort of share with the audience in some compelling way the ideas that I think are interesting, within the story, and to entertain in the appropriate way. These kinds of movies are audience movies, so you want people to get caught up in them. You want them to follow the mystery, but not enough so that the twists don't surprise them. Because
they're completely in this one.
I'm so glad, and that's a threat. I've been hearing that from other audiences as well.
Yeah.
That's so important with this. There are more twists in this story than in the
anything
others.
you've ever done before. But that's what makes it interesting. But I wonder, are you like an artist? When an artist finishes a painting, he goes, okay, I've done the painting, and he then puts it to one side and forgets about it. You finish the film, and then we put the music on and we make the film. Then you have to go out and talk about the film. So you live with it for a lot longer than most people.
Well, sometimes I wish I could make the movie over again after I've spent a couple of weeks talking about it. And it's a pretty good exercise. And in some ways, I try to replicate that when I'm preparing the movie. So I talked about those location scouts where you're going out with your colleagues and your production designer and your cinematographer and so on, and you're looking at the location. It's a chance to begin that kind of dialogue. But no, I'm not one for going back and watching the movies years later.
Because there's a huge amount of work that goes into the movie before you even start filming it. You've got to go to the locations, you've got to see the places, you've got to try and position in your own mind where that shot will come in from there. So you've storyboarded, you know where everything is going. There must be so much going on in your mind.
Well, it's a long process. You know, Hitchcock used to say that the actual shooting was kind of a letdown for him, but it's not for me because I love that final collaboration with the actors. And also the cinematographer, you know, especially in modern movies, camera movement and things are so linked to what's going on in the performances in ways that really matter. And so that final sort of orchestration, it's a little bit like a conductor actually getting to the performance level, and that's something that I get a lot of you know, a lot of satisfaction out of on the day. And my favorite feeling is that if an actor or the camera operator or somebody has surprised me with some little moment of inspiration that wasn't planned for, that I didn't tell them to do, that's my very favorite thing, because it means I created a framework for really great artists to excel, and in addition to whatever I could bring to it as a director. And that's thrilling. That's the biggest thrill for me.
Yeah. You're a very, very nice man. We like you a lot.
Well,
we always liked you. The film is cracking. It is suspense. It is fast moving. There's bits which will have you going, oh, never saw that coming. In fact, you have quite a few bits like that. Inferno is in cinemas now. Ron Howard, a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yes, well, I'm not surprised. I mean, he's stunningly gorgeous, sickeningly gorgeous. I mean, really,
Do you know,
anybody
last
be
night
mad?
he was running around the kids' bedrooms getting them all overexcited in his pants.
Well, dear.
And he's got the most amazing physique.